Welcome to Chapter 3, Building Arrays and Controlling Flow. In this chapter, you'll store data in arrays, use while statements, do while statements, and for statements to repeatedly execute code, use if statements and if-else statements to make decisions, and nest one if statement in another. So far we've been storing one value of a variable at a time. Arrays allow us to store a set of data represented by a single variable name. For example, the news section variable can be an array that contains the data world, local, opinion, and sports. The syntax for an array is the keyword var followed by the variable name assigned to the array, followed by the equals assignment operator and the values in the array within brackets. Each value contained in an array is called an element. Each element has an index, which represents the element's position within the array. Remember that in programming, the indexing starts with 0, so 0 refers to the first element in the array, and 1 refers to the second element in an array. The example code var new sections equals world, local, opinion, and sports creates an array named news sections containing 4 strings as elements: world, local, opinion, and sports. Brackets and an element index are used to modify or add values in an existing array. For example, to add living as the 5th element of the news section array, you'd use news sections sub 4 equals living. Sub 4 stands for subscript 4 and is used to refer to a particular index in an array. The length property returns the number of elements in an array. The syntax is name.length. For example, if there are 7 elements in an array named days of week.length will return 7. Web page elements from our HTML documents can be referenced by looking up all elements with a specific tag name. For example, if we wanted to manipulate the third li element in a list, we could use the getElementsByTagName method, as shown here in the example. The 2 in brackets refers to the third element of the 3 li elements in the HTML document. Addressing. Programming is often useful because it automates tasks that we want to perform repeatedly. If we want to perform the same task 10 or 100 or more times, we would use loop statements, such as while statements, do while statements, and for statements. A while statement repeats a group of statements as long as a given conditional expression evaluates to a truthy value. Truthy values are any values other than false, 0, null, undefined, or not a number. The syntax for a while statement consists of the word while, followed by an expression in parentheses, followed by a group of statements enclosed in curly braces. Each repetition or cycle of a looping statement is known as an iteration. Here's an example of a while statement. Line 1 declares and initializes a variable called count to 1. Line 2 begins with the keyword while, followed by the condition count is less than or equal to 5. Line 3 uses the document.write method to print the value of the count variable, followed by a line break. And line 4 increments the value of count by 1. The final line prints, "You have printed 5 numbers" to the document object. We can see the result here. The while loop first prints the numbers 1 through 5, at which point "You've printed 5 numbers" is printed. Here's another example of a while loop. In line 1, the variable count is declared and initialized to 1. In line 2, the while loop begins with the condition count is less than or equal to 100. In line 3, the value of the count variable is printed, followed by a line break. In line 4, the value of count is doubled using the compound multiple assignment operator times equals. The result in the browser is that the numbers 1, 2, and 4 are printed and continue doubling and printing to the browser until the value of count is greater than 100, at which point the while loop terminates. A do-while loop is similar to a while loop, except that the statements of a do-while loop always execute at least once before the condition expression is evaluated the first time. The syntax for a do-while loop is the keyword do, followed by a group of statements enclosed in curly braces, followed by the while keyword and an expression in parentheses. Let's compare the two types of loops we've seen so far. At the top of the screen is code containing a do-while loop, and at the bottom is code containing a while loop. What's the difference between executing these two sets of statements? In both statements, the variable count has a value of 2. So the condition count is less than 2 is false. But the first set of statements will run at least once, printing the count is equal to 2, and then terminate. The second set of statements will not run at all, since the condition in the while loop, count is less than 2, is not true. The difference between the do-while and the while loop is that the do-while loop runs at least once, even when the condition is not true. The for statement is used to repeat a group of statements as long as a given condition evaluates to true. The for statement is slightly more efficient than the while statement because it does not require as many lines of code, as you can see on page 175 of the book. The syntax of a for loop begins with the keyword for, followed by a counter declaration, a condition, and a counter operation, separated by semicolons and parentheses. The control block of the for loop is enclosed in curly braces. In this example code, the array brightest stars is declared and initialized to have the string elements Sirius, Canopus, Arcturus, Rigel, and Vega. The for loop in line 3 declares and initializes a variable named count to 0, and sets the condition that count is less than the length of the brightest stars array, which is 5, and specifies that the count variable will be incremented by 1 each iteration. The control block of the for loop prints the element in the brightest stars array with the index of the variable count. The value of the variable count goes from 0 to 1 to 2 to 3 to 4. The result is that we'll print out all 5 elements in the brightest stars array in the browser. Finally, we often need to execute one group of statement in a certain set of conditions and another group of statements in another set of conditions. To make these sort of decisions, we use the most common type of decision-making statements, the if statement. The syntax for an if statement is shown here. Use the keyword if, followed by a condition in parentheses, and the group of statements we wish to execute if the condition is true, enclosed in curly braces. In tutorial 3.8, we'll add an if statement to an example JavaScript file. An if-else statement is used to execute one set of statements if the evaluation of a conditional expression is true, and another set of statements if the evaluation of a conditional expression is false. You can think of an else clause as a backup plan that occurs when the condition being tested evaluates to false. The syntax for an if-else statement begins the same as an if statement, except that we use the keyword else, followed by a group of statements in curly braces, immediately following the if statement. In tutorial 3.9, we'll add an if-else statement to an example JavaScript file. Here's an example of an if-else statement in JavaScript. Line 1 declares a variable named today and initializes its value to the string literal Tuesday. Then, line 2 uses an if statement to test whether the value of the variable today is equal to Monday. If it is, we'll use the document.write method to print today is Monday. But if it's not, we'll use the document.write method to print today is not Monday. As you probably guessed, the result of running this example code is that today is not Monday will print in the browser, because the value of the variable today is something other than Monday. It's also possible to embed one if statement in another, to create a nested if statement. Here in line 1, we declare and initialize a variable sales total to 75. In line 2, we check whether sales total is greater than 50. And if it is, we then also check whether sales total is less than 100. If sales total is both greater than 50 and less than 100, we print the sales total is between 50 and 100.